Up tomorrow, but we are definitely closer to the end.
All right.
Questa settimana su Week in Rock i Manics Preachers. Know Your Enemy, il nuovo album. La scomparsa di Richie Edwards e il potere del messaggio. In più, Gorillaz, una band ai confini della realtà. Get Your Freak On, The Return of Missy Elliott. JJ72, The Ultimate Irish Sensation. Once Upon a Time, MTV Story, Part 2. And the latest news on Radiohead, Oasis. Solo su Week in Rock.
Noi ve li avevamo promessi e ragazzi, come dire, un inizio più bello di così non ci poteva assolutamente essere, perché chiaramente Week in Rock è passato con MTV sull'altro canale, TMC2, per cui ragazzi in occasione specialissima abbiamo qui i Manic Street Preachers. What took you so long to get here?
I don't know, we've just been working so much since the album's been released, you know, we went to Cuba and then we just did loads of promotion and stuff, so it's just been kind of, we haven't had any time.
I've been wanting for ages to interview you guys.
We wanted to save the nicest place to last.
Right.
When we were at our most miserable, we just want to buoy ourselves up with a kind of better kind of environment.
We've been in Germany for 2 weeks, so we thought, let's save Italy to cheer us up.
Exactly, and especially Victoria should cheer us up.
Oh, all right.
First of all, you've been very, very busy. Your album's been out a couple of months now. So how does it feel?
Kind of feels, weird, because it's kind of like, we started off, like a campaign with Gone to Cuba and stuff, and that was kind of like quite a lot of pressure. So kind of like actually just doing gigs now is just much more of an ordinary experience, starting the campaign off with something so pressurized and so big.
Which is Know Your Enemy, and do you actually know your enemy musically?
I think it was just about realising and get back to our roots, really. It's just about a bit of self-realisation that everybody eventually wants to kind of recreate why they started something in the first place, and we wanted to get that anger and passion back.
It's just actually just looking at yourself and realising that at one point, you can't be that vigilant and you will let yourself down, and you've kind of just got to challenge yourself. It was more directed at ourselves, some kind of self-criticism.
We weren't sure what to choose for this album, really. It's such an eclectic album that nothing really represented the album in its kind of overall sound, but that was the one track we just thought would put a smile on people's faces, I guess. It was hard to choose the first single. That's why in Britain we put 2 out, because there's a lot of different sounds on the album, and in the UK we had found that soul answer, White is Sad, so there's no great theory behind it.
Nothing like that.
Unfortunately not.
That in England, you guys are actually considered a national treasure. How do you feel about that? Does that put any weight on your shoulders and that?
Well, I think we've been going 10 years, and you kind of earn your spurs. At the start we were kind of ridiculed, which is fine. The way we looked and everything was totally different to what was going on. So I think if you kind of hang around and make good records, then eventually you reach that state of acceptance, really.
Yeah, kind of. It felt kind of weird to be kind of have such like a reverent status just upon you. But like most national treasures, at one point, kind of people
want to get rid of you.
People are going to turn against you.
You guys have always been really known for, the fact that you actually always try to get a message across. And so I'm thinking, is it still easy to do that? In a world of Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys and all that, is it still easy to carry on and be determined and do your thing?
No.
No.
I think it's very hard. I think you've only got to look at well, two of my favourite bands, our favourite bands, if you look at Rage Against the Machine, they split because they couldn't handle it, and I had to drive in, I think, got the best young band around. Their future is very uncertain at the moment as well, because if you stand up like a nail, you get knocked down, and if you try to say something, then you open yourself to ridicule, whereas if you say nothing, then it's a little bit easier. So I think it is tough, but not for us, if you know what I mean, because we enjoy it. But if you're a young band now and you look at which ways you want to go, I think you'd rather go that way than our way.
Shortcut.
Ok, a questo punto ci fermiamo per proprio pochissimi secondi e torniamo sempre con i Manics. Eccoci qua, sempre con i Manics, seconda parte di Weekend Rock. So, you were talking about Cuba earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that.
It kind of like we just knew that we were getting ourselves into something which was like going to be very complicated, and it was going to and at the end of the day, we knew that we would get a lot of criticism and we would get a lot of praise in equal measures. We knew it would be a very complicated experience.
But what about Fidel? What can you say about him?
It's I must admit, we met him just before the concert, and we had no idea that we were going to meet him.
Right.
So when we actually...
So what happened? Did they come in and say, actually, somebody's out here who wants to...
Yeah, it was all very covert, just coded language, like, if you want to meet somebody, you must come with us now. Without actually just saying his name.
Yeah, no one ever said Fidel Castro is in the building. They just
really?
Ushered us in. And, I mean, we didn't go there for that. It was a great experience. We went there for the people, to give something to them. But, he's just really charming and witty. He looked great. He spoke really, really well, and he's just very charismatic.
Many people who have listened to this album, and many, critics and that, have talked about the fact that there is you can feel a really strong memory of Richie in this album. Do you agree on that?
I think in the way that I think that you can hear some of the influences on the record that from things that we listened to when we were very young. I mean, because we were all such obsessive music fans when we were younger, including Richie. So in that sense, I think I can that kind of eclecticism, just those the bedroom boys that we were, just playing records and reading books. I think that kind of spirit is definitely in the record. We're we're all pooling our influences and just obsessively just listen to any music we get our hands on. I'm not sure lyrically though. I'm not quite sure.
If you feel like talking about it, have you actually come to a sort of conclusion of what's happened and that? Because probably many people have asked you this question.
Yeah, I think immediately after the Richie thing happened, obviously there were so many sightings and so many theories and so many rumours as to what had happened to him, and once that was still ongoing, it became some part of myth kind of thing, and we realised that the best way to actually perhaps retain some kind of sanity was not to have any theories, not to not to actually swap theories and say, wonder if he went there, wonder if he did this, and we realised that to actually just perhaps draw a line underneath it and say, the only thing we know is that what he did under his own volition. He did he's what he wanted to do. That's the only conclusion we can reach, and that's the best way to try and retain a bit of sanity in terms of the memory of Richie, whatever he's done, wherever he is. So we stopped even theorising about where he is or what he's doing.
Guys, it's been a real pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much. And enjoy the rest of your promotional tour all around Europe. Don't get too tired.
We're in the sunny part now.
Yes, you're in the sunny part, so you're happy. E noi ragazzi ci salutiamo, io vi ringrazio tantissimo e alla settimana prossima. Ciao!